Greetings once again from quarantine, everybody. Front stretch wrap up, talking about the race that we saw this past weekend at Texas Motor Speedway. I am Davey. That is Dustin, and we got a lot to talk. Dustin, Austin Dillon, how about that? I did not see that coming with about 50 laps to go, but tire strategy, fuel strategy, different pit stops for the RCR cars net them the top two starting spots for a couple final restarts, and it wound up holding up the field at the end. Austin Dillon wins for the first time in 88 races. I bet you didn't see that coming either.
No, David, I definitely didn't see it coming. Every week I do like a 1 through 10, kind of who I think is going to finish first or 10th. Didn't have Austin Dillon in the top 10. Also didn't have Custer in the top 10 last week, but that's a side note. But yeah, Austin Dillon. Look, I'm shocked that besides the two RCR guys, that nobody else either took fuel only or two tires. We saw that tires didn't really matter, haven't mattered much this year at tracks like Texas. Look at Kentucky last weekend, for instance. So, yeah, very interesting race. I thought it was a great race, honestly, by Texas standards. I know we'll get into that. But, yeah, Austin Dillon, he's in the playoffs.
And you tweeted after the race, and we were talking about it off mic here. I mean, by Texas standards, right? Like, that was a pretty good race. Texas standards are, it's a bad track. There's not a lot of fall off. There's not a lot of groove. I agree with you on that sense. Like, by Texas standards, it's pretty good. But at the end of the day, I mean, Joey Logano said it in his post-race press conference as well. Like, the tires wear, but they don't fall off. Like, you can still run your fastest laps of the race 30, 40 laps into a run. And that's the problem that we run into with this package, this track, and this tire is that there's not much going on.
Yeah. Joey Logano, like you said, he brought it up how the tire wears, it goes down to its core, it just never loses speed, which is not good at all. I put on Twitter how I thought it was a good race. I really thought it was a good race, especially the final stage. The first two stages, they kind of sucked, but by Texas standards, even they were okay. And really, since the repavement in 2017, I mean, I've dreaded watching Texas races because they're 500 miles. It takes forever. There's not a lot happening. This was different in my opinion, especially once that big wreck happened. But yeah, tire wear, it exists. It's just the fall off isn't there.
Yeah, and that's a problem not that NASCAR needs to go after, but I think that's a Goodyear issue, and we've heard that over and over again. But it's hard to make a tire that will wear and give up grip and give up time when you have as much downforce and as much speed as these cars have going through the center of the corners. Like, that's the problem that Goodyear is trying to rid themselves of for years now. It doesn't happen overnight, but I just like to see a little bit more progress on it. You know what I mean?
Definitely, Davey. I wonder where we would be if we were 2 years ago and we had these same tires, the same tire compound, the same back-to-back weeks at Kentucky and Texas, and we had the 750 horsepower and we had a smaller spoiler and a lot less downforce. I wonder if those tires wear. I bet they wear more, not wear because they're wearing, but if they, if there's fall off.
Yeah. I'm interested to see how that would play out too. But I know that there was a big wreck in the final stage. I think it was on the first restart of the final stage. You had Kurt Busch, Eric Almirola. They got into each other a little bit, which got into the 18 of Kyle Busch. And then he got into his teammate, Martin Truex Jr. And then chaos ensued there. Everybody was just piling into each other. And then there was a clip circulating about, I think from 2014 when there was a similar wreck at Texas on the front stretch. Nobody had anywhere to go. And that had a couple contenders in that one that wound up being out of the race. I mean, Truex is always a fast car at the mile and a half. Kyle Busch became a lawnmower at that point. He was just mowing through the entire front stretch grass, and nobody really had anywhere to go. So that was kind of, I think, the turning point of the race where things started to shift a little bit from, all right, stay in your lane, ride around a little bit, wait till the final stage to get antsy here. And you saw on that restart, it got triggered by a Blaney. He got a little bit loose coming off of 4, and then everybody kind of was fighting for real estate. But I think it's also one of those things where it's just a racing incident, and it just happened that a lot of good cars and drivers got involved in it, not of their own doing.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a game changer. And we've seen for the past year and a half now that restarts are everything with this package. So you have to get all you can get. And drivers were doing that. And in the process, there was like 3 wide, 3 rows deep. And that's just not going to work through the dog leg. We've seen that happen at places like Charlotte. I think like 10 years ago, a truck, maybe it was Mike Skinner, flipped into the fence there. So it's just not going to work. But again, they got to do what they got to do on restarts, because once it gets strung out, I mean, I heard early on in the race yesterday, Kyle Busch was a half second back from Martin Truex Jr. And he could already feel the wake of the car.
Yeah.
So you got to get all you can get on restarts, or else you're not going to be able to pass.
Yeah, that's all you have to do. I mean, if Tony Stewart was racing with this package, for as much as he hates blocking, he would not have a good time, because you have to block, because the runs that you get on the restarts in this package is restart-based and momentum-based. And those are the two things that you see on restarts. A lot of momentum from the specific preferred groove at the specific racetrack, and a lot of blocking to maintain your positions. We also got to talk about the positioning of the guys that are on the playoff bubble. I tweeted this morning the standings, because after at like a first glance, you're like, oh, that's interesting. Cole Custer is a winner. Austin Dillon's now a winner. Like, that's interesting. I also find it interesting that Tyler Reddick on points is ahead of a Joe Gibbs racing car and Eric Jones, which blows my mind. But when you look at the results, it's not really a surprise. Jimmy Johnson, even though he's missed a race due to COVID-19, he DNF'd another race because of failing inspection. He is still right on the bubble, and he's probably looking good to get in the playoffs if he keeps up his trajectory and finishes out these races. He's battling with his Hendrick teammate, William Byron. Even Bubba Wallace, I know it's a long shot, but he's 20th still in the picture and in the hunt. I mean, this bubble is getting really, really interesting to watch, as we got, 8 races left in the regular season?
Yeah, 8 races left in the regular season, and only 6 weekends, 2 doubleheaders, the Daytona road course, which who knows what's going to happen there, and then the Daytona Super Speedway race, which also who knows what's going to happen there. So, yeah, it looks like Matt DiBenedetto down 14th, 15th, 16th in the standings. I would worry, especially if you're 15th, especially 16th with Jimmy Johnson. Looking at the standings right now, Jimmy's got 2 points over William Byron, and Jimmy got lucky yesterday because he got loose, hit the wall, and it looked like he was doomed for a 35th place day, or at best. And it turns out there's a lot of, carnage in the final stage there. So he manages 26th place finish and gained points on William Byron. As far as Reddick, I mean, he's been consistently fast this year. And I think he's up Austin Dillon's game quite a bit. And then Jones has just been super inconsistent by Joe Gibbs racing standards. But not necessarily by his standards, because this is his 3rd year in the 20 car, and he's always been down by the bubble.
Yeah.
Granted, he's won his way in the past 2 years. So I think he's going to have to probably win his way in this year.
Yeah, I got a lot to say about Eric Jones. A lot of good to say about Eric Jones, but I mean, it's becoming
very talented
now, where you're not seeing him get the most out of his equipment that he should be getting, when you got Kyle Busch winning championships, Truex winning championships, Denny winning races, and should have won the championship last year. I mean, it's tough to see. Speaking of tough to see, Quinn Huff. I don't even know where to begin. Jordan Bianchi said on the teardown last night that he looked like a elderly man in Miami trying to cross 5 lanes of traffic to get to his exit at the last second. And the sad thing is, that's not the first time we've seen that out of the 00 this year. And I tweeted after that incident, Landon Castle looking at his mentions right now, and the Kermit the Frog drinking the tea, because it seems like this guy is in the way every single week, multiple times per race. I mean, DBC talks about it all the time, and I laugh about it. But now it's becoming a thing where it's a legitimate problem, because he is not only affecting the outcome of his race, but he's involving other drivers on the playoff bubble. Matt DiBenedetto was in an incident last night. I mean, and Brad Keselowski had some really interesting thoughts last night about promotion and demotion from the Cup Series level, in terms of guys needing the proper experience to come up and come down. I know that's a lot of information, but last night's Quinn Huff incident, what did you make of it? And I guess Brad Keselowski's comments afterward as well.
So I agree with Keselowski's comments, and Clinton Boyer kind of doubled down and agreed with him on a Zoom call this morning, on a Ford Zoom call. Back in the day, that's what happened in terms of promotions. Essentially, you would start in ARCA, go to Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. Yeah. Now with how money-based racing has become, especially NASCAR, over the past 15, 20 years, if you have money, you can buy a ride. And essentially, that's exactly what happened with Quinn Huff. And not saying he has a ton of money, because he's at 8. He works with PMG, who I'm doing a story on Colby Howard, who I'm I've been impressed with him this year in Xfinity, also represented by PMG, and their goal is they don't have a ton of money, so they try to get up the ranks as quick as they can, which is not good because they don't have a lot of experience. Before last year, Quinn Huff had, I think, 10 Xfinity starts.
Yeah.
Not much experience on asphalt.
No truck starts and like a handful of Can-Am starts. It's like, you look at it on paper and you say, this guy is not ready for the Cup level. He's not even ready for a full-time Xfinity year. It's bad.
Yeah, for sure. And when I hear people say like, "Oh, we got the 40 best drivers out there," I kind of chuckle every week because we don't at all. And that's not, I'm not trying to discredit Quinn Huff because he probably is a pretty good driver at the local level, but work your way up and don't take a huge jump, come in with some money and replace Landon Castle, who did a respectable job last year, past 2 years with StarCom.
Yeah, Landon Castle had the lowest crash rate in the entire Cup Series last year. When you think of a guy that takes care of his equipment and, doesn't do too much with what he's given, like that's Landon Castle for you. But he also overperforms every now and then. So seeing Quinn Huff in the 00 this year and Landon Castle in it last year, it's like the most stark dichotomy that you could ever see in the Cup Series, especially in the back half of the garage. Dustin, we got Kansas coming up on Thursday, but after this race on Thursday, other sports are going to begin coming back in a bigger capacity. MLB's opening days coming up. Who knows what's going on in the NBA bubble? I know they're building a barber shop and LeBron's calling it a big AAU tournament. But this is going to kind of mark the end of NASCAR being at the forefront in the sports landscape once the checker flag flies at Kansas. In a word, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but give me one word to describe how NASCAR you think as a sanctioning body has handled being the live sport in town and pretty much the only one at that during this pandemic.
Ooh. I don't know if I can come up with one word.
I'll give you a sentence.
I think they've done a good job with the protocols they've had to kind of go against and everything that was going against them coming into this, and they've kind of set a barrier on what other sports can follow.
I would say unprecedented. That'd be my one word because that's what it is. But at the same time of it being an unprecedented situation, and I got to give a lot of credit to Fox too. I mean, I work for NBC with my other freelance gig, but Fox did an incredible job. I mean, from the iRacing boom to putting that on TV like that, getting themselves back at the racetrack and a lot of different camera angles, unique perspectives. The sanctioning body themselves, the television networks as well, they did a really good job with what they had to work with considering the circumstances. So it's hard to say that they've done anything but pass with flying colors. And I think that that's going to continue to be shown throughout the rest of the year. Hopefully some of those new fans that came aboard this year, whether it was in the midst of all the Bubba stuff that was going on or whether they were just bored and wanted to throw some money down on a bet. I've had a couple friends text me throughout this pandemic being like, so who should I take in this Bubba versus Priest matchup? But I hope some of them stay because we got a lot of good races coming up and especially in the playoffs. So, Dustin, I'll give you the final word. Any final thoughts on Texas and leading into Kansas? I know we didn't really expect to be talking about an Austin Dillon victory on this Monday, but that's why we love NASCAR, right? Cole Custer and Austin Dillon back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, again, I thought it was a good race. Austin Dillon will be on the Frontstretch podcast this week, so tune into that. And yeah, good get for this week. But yeah, Austin Dillon is in the playoffs, and we have a plethora of drivers, a handful of them, competing for that final couple spots, which will be interesting here over the next 8 races.
It will be interesting to see. Shameless plug time. Check us out on Patreon, frontstretch.com/Patreon. Or no, it's patreon.com/frontstretch. There it is. There you go. And Dustin, do we have something to market for the Frontstretch podcast?
We just got, Manscaped. Manscaped's on board. We got, they've sponsored us for the past couple months, and we're continuing that. So I always love Manscaped, and they've hooked us up over the past couple months.
If you got to trim your nether regions, look no further than Manscaped. Well,
absolutely.
For Dustin, I'm Davey. On behalf of everybody here at Frontstretch, we'll catch you back here next week when we hopefully recap some racing from Kansas.